Welcome everyone. This is our fourth webinar in the series of IoF 2020. My name is Gerben Splinter of Wageningen Economic Research, and I will be your moderator for today. Earlier on, we already had this year 3 webinars, one on consumer behavior, one on business model platforms, and one on price setting for IoT solutions in agri-food. This fourth webinar is about European Digital Test Farm Network and gives us insight on the test farm concept. Thank you, of course, for joining us today. But before we start, I have some technical instructions for you. Next slide, please. In this session, we will drop some questions on which we would like you to respond. So please go now to your phone or your other second screen and search for the website www.menti.com, and you can use the code as put on the screen. You can see it right here. Use the code 847974 to join us on menti.com, and Alex will send him some questions later on, which we will ask you to answer. So please use this web address and this code, and you can interact with us later on. Also, a technical thing: in order to ensure a clear and on-time discussion, we will keep you as an audience muted. So please also mute your own mic and only use the chat function in GoToMeeting if you like to ask a question. As a moderator, I will pick up the questions and I will ask them to our guests later on. Third slide, please. Of course, I will be not hosting this webinar on my own. I'd like to introduce you to 2 perfect experts who are joining us today, and who will tell you more about this topic. These experts are, as mentioned already, Alexander Berlin. He is the IoF 2020 business leader, and he is also the CEO of Berlin Thinking Consulting. And next to me here, joining me today, is my colleague Gohar Nuhoff. She is also of IoF 2020, and she is an expert on KPIs. She's a senior researcher at Wageningen Economic Research, and we will be assisted here by my colleague Marion Bogers. She is doing the technical part for this webinar. At first, Alex will kick off this webinar, talking about current test farm situation and services of the European Test Farm Network. And after that, Gohar will take over and tell you something more about impact validation. As said, during their contributions, we will drop some questions on which we would like you to respond. And your answers are sort of an appetizer for the discussion later on in the second part of this webinar, which we will hope to start in about half an hour. Also, a warm welcome to some special guests who will join us today. I hope I pronounced the names right. It's Mr. Marton Ranay. He is of IoF 2020 use case 2.7 Mooncysts, and also Adriana Balazzi. She is a business development manager at AET Food. They will give their feedback and experiences at the end of the presentations. And just like I stated already, we have some 20-25 minutes left for the Q&A. So that's how it works today. That's how it works for today. Will be scheduled till about 5 o'clock, maybe a little bit later, because due to starting 10 minutes later than we're supposed to do. So I would now like to give the mic to Alex to kick off this webinar with the first part of the presentation. So please, Alex, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful, great, thank you. Can we have the presentation maybe full screen? That would be awesome, because then we can. Now we're just still seeing it in the work mode. But nonetheless, still we're figuring that out. Short a road to test farm. As I said, so current test farm situations. We're going to have a short look into that. Then we wanted to introduce you to the test farm services and validation services that we intend to offer with the Digital Test Farm Network. And then we're going a bit in the value proposition again, and also, let's say, the business models and let's say the funding and sustainability part of it again. And then we're joining into the discussion with a few guests that are working on test farms already, or that are looking for test farms right now from within their own use cases, for example, so that like a stakeholder that will join us later on. So let's start with the current situation. So as maybe most of you already know, we have quite still some challenges also bringing innovation to the farmer, but also to the industry. So we identified that pretty clearly out of IoF, because you see IoF is running now since 3 years, and all the things that we're doing is basically large-scale validation of smart services and IoT pilots all over Europe. So we established already kind of a network of 140 test farms, and we've seen it was very difficult in the first 3 years. We lost quite some time in actually maintaining and setting up. So we thought, why should we not sustain it if we already have it? So what we did was basically at the beginning of IoF, we selected innovations. I think that is what everyone does, a company, accelerators, whoever. So we brought service providers, hardware providers together. We had a product development part where a smart service is actually derived from. And then we had the issue to validate that service, because at the end, it's only being someone buying the service if there is a clear validation of the service to others. So we put the test farms up. So each of our services running at least on 3 to 4 different test farms, so that we get a lot of KPI data for them, so that we can prove at the end to the farmer that this service really works. So the key part here is validation, and as IoF is already key and in this kind of activities and already developed quite interesting methodologies on it, we came up with the idea of putting a test farm network out of it. So here we want to tackle the major challenges, for example, of service providers on the one side. So that is identifying test farms. We lost quite some time identifying the right test farms in the right situation, having the right equipment being set up as well. Then we have the problem that we need more and more multi-actor approaches to services that being pushed to the market. So that means a manufacturer alone cannot do it anymore, but there must be a manufacturer of hardware coming together with a service provider, coming together maybe with pharmacy associations, maybe coming together with other data providers as well. So it's a multi-actor world, so quite difficult with your own single test farm network maybe that you have already as a company. And then there is the trust issue as well. So it's always a bit of a hassle to convince a farmer to actually share the data with a service provider, for example, to do a product testing, to keep up this kind of relationship. And at the end, to cover also all geographies that you're actually interested in. So means, so if you're based in Italy, that you can actually also have test farms in Germany or in Poland, which is until now quite difficult. So what we did basically is we looked a little bit in the current situation, and so we have existing test infrastructure. That is not, it's not that we're inventing anything new. So we have the corporates have their test farm networks, for example, where they have 40 test farms, for example, with the buyer forward farm, 4 test farms, for example, with smaller providers. But we want to position the EDTFN, so the European Digital Test Farm Network, very much to the side on the testing and validation part, with quite a number of farms, with over 100 plus 300, 400, 500 farms at the end, based obviously on what we have already in IoF, to actually offer that the testing and validation part in a very professional way. And obviously we're not alone, so there's also the demonstration angle of the product development. So it means that is not really what we're tackling, but there are projects that are doing that. So Nefertiti, for example, is a partner project that we're working with. They are very much in the demonstration field, already having 400 and plus test farms. So if we combine these activities, we could actually bring a joint network up to the point where it covers everything from testing, validation, to actually demonstrating the product in the market. So that might be a very interesting thing to go for. And then obviously there are challenges for the farmers as well. So farmers are usually, if they're looking to smart solutions in the market, they are actually overwhelmed because there are way too many solutions, unclear benefits. The direct value is very limited sometimes. So it's very unclear if I have to invest time and effort into testing the solution as well. Then there is a very low trust on the data exchange side. So if you have my data, do I still have control? Can I delete it? So these kind of issues are still there. And then there is obviously also limited investment capacities on the farm side. So that means they cannot invest in every digital tool which comes around the corner. They have to do very strategic investments on it, and that is very difficult on the current information setup. So that's a bit the situation, and we have prepared like a few questions on it, because obviously maybe we're not complete on the challenges. So we're asking you to rank, first of all, the challenges that we just put it up, and secondly, to add challenges that you might actually see as well to service providers, but also to farmers, that could be tackled by a European test farm network. And we're coming later to that back, so that will be on Mentimeter. We do all your questions in a short discussion round at the end. Let's come now to the EDTFN services. So what can a European digital test farm network actually do in order to tackle all of these challenges? So what we are thinking here is that we're taking the different single test farms that we're having, maybe a few connected test farms, for example, in the research field, but also the corporate test farm that are already out there. So that means also the network, obviously, of IoF 2020, for example, and interconnect that and combine it into a European test farm network that actually works on the same standard. So we'll actually put these test farms into a catalog, checking them for the equipment which is available, checking them for their location, for their size, so that you have basically a catalog as a service provider to go through and to pick the farms you're interested in, that you would like to work with. And then obviously applying as well a standard process of how to actually measure the KPIs so that you have, with also the same digital systems running on the different farms, a very comparable situations on all of the farms, so that you can also compare at the end the results, which is quite difficult, important for the validation part. And then at the end, so that will actually feed into a kind of like a platform system where you can actually do a proper matchmaking between service provider and between a test farm in the network. So which is actually reducing the overhead, which is reducing time quite a lot. So there is one part that the test farm is offering, which is the private service validation, as we call it. So it's basically what we do in IoF already. So we're having a service provider who has a product in development, who has maybe a new hypothesis for a product that they would like to test. And now they have to go to a farm and implement it and go certain cycles through. So how do they do that? So they have a test farm, and they define the methods and KPIs that they would like to measure there. They implement their hardware and software on it, and then the thing runs in test cycles. So usually that is defined with the product developer before, and then you have like automatic exchange of some feedback and reviews, and then it actually goes into a final report at the end. So there is a timeline set for the validation part, and then actually the product will be launched to the market, and ideally using already the KPIs that are coming out of that process. So it means for the farmer, that gives a little bit more overview about what the product can do. But specifically, as that is paid and also by the service provider, this information is obviously then being in the hands of the service provider, and they can decide what to do with it. So there will be one first payment at the beginning when you actually come to the farm as a service provider. You have to do a little bit of a financial involvement. You're using existing infrastructure from the farm side. And then also the second payment, obviously, at the end for the final reporting. So there is financial flows involved. I'm coming to that a little bit later. But we can also say, so that was the private part, but maybe even more interesting is the public validation service part. So here we're actually taking the middle part is actually the same. So we have a test farm with the test cycles, we have a final report. But actually the people that are doing or initiating this are maybe, in this case, farmer associations, for example. That could be DLG, that could be all national associations, that could be cooperatives as well. So the idea here is that they are actually giving some money into that process of validation, and then at the end putting the information not in a final product, but putting it into an open service catalog. So you can actually have a look as a farmer, openly comparable into the performances impacts of a specific service. and then you can make a more informed purchase decision at the end. So for example, we in IoF, we're using for that, or we're proposing a solution which is called the IoT catalog. So if any one of you is interested in that, please have a look at it. It's under iotcatalog.eu, and it already has a list of our 33 use cases and their products on it. So maybe a quite nice read. So now we're talking always about service providers and test farms. So that is a bit like our but it's not the only stakeholder, obviously, that we're having around might benefit from a test farm network. So we have hardware providers as well. We see quite a lot of time also going into hardware validation, which is quite difficult. So we're also tackling that issue. Universities, educational sectors being connected. So right now they're doing research and educational things that they're connected test farms, but that is very limited for each of the universities. So usually they have 1 or 2 test farms being connected. So it means you can maybe not always offer every experience that you would like to offer to your students or to your research projects. Then there is accelerators and digital innovation hubs, a very important pillar as well. So the service providers that we're seeing here on the one side usually come also through these accelerators and digital innovation hubs, because they are usually startups in many cases, or SMEs that are just developing a product. So they are sourcing mainly out of this accelerator and digital innovation ecosystem. And then not the less important, the investors. So also investors are quite interested to validate at a certain point when there is a larger investment, a Series A or maybe sometimes Series B investment coming through, that they actually have an option to send this startup or this service somewhere and validate. So how could that actually look like? So we're proposing a bit like a foundation business model, as we're seeing it already with Fiverr or some other more independent systems, which is going to be fed with a service fee that we just discussed. So a service provider is just coming there, paying a service fee. Then there is a demonstration activity part, so parts that Nefertiti is already doing, but there is a bit of a professionalization into that, so that you have a professional, a demonstrator case basically on a farm as well, where you can send your customers to. And then we have the idea of a virtual test farm for algorithms. So that means that is basically the data that is being created in a test farm, making that accessible for people that are actually training algorithms only, and paying also for that access. And then we have obviously the access fee then for education research, for example, as well, so that you have a broader access there. And then we have this being distributed obviously mainly to the farmer, because they have the main overhead on their farm. So that is an additional income source to the farmer, next to doing their normal farm business. Then we're putting parts in that into a research institute, which is actually doing the validation part. So we need some validation experts on that as well. And then we're having the network organization in general. So there is a bit of a platform things that we have to provide. So maybe some organizational parts that need to be put in there. So a minor part of the budget would go there as well. And then the idea might be also an innovation investment fund that could be created next to it. So everyone who would actually like to join as a test farm or would like to set up certain technologies on their farm, that they actually can access this innovation investment fund, so you get a bit of a site investment when they're actually implementing IoT technologies. So that could be one. Obviously, that can be tackled and should be tackled and critically reviewed by you guys. So the question is, which other services could a test farm network obviously provide? So you just heard of a few, but maybe there's even more that we even haven't thought of. And then also, do you see that the stakeholders could benefit from a test farm network? So which other stakeholders than the ones that we just mentioned could be benefiting from? So now we're coming to the impact validation, and I'm handing over. So that is a bit deeper, going into the actual process of impact validation, and I would hand over that to my colleague Gohar. If it's okay, I just click your slides through. If that's fine.
Yeah, that's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Gohar Nuhoff-Isakhanyan, and I'm very happy to talk about impact validation and what it is and how can we validate innovative solution in a test farm. So next slide, please. Alex. Yes, the validation is an act and a process of making something accessible or approved. A proof of something is correct, and validation innovation is a process of gathering evidence and learning about business ideas through experimenting and user testing in order to make it faster, informed, the risk decision. So this is coming from the literature, but in practice, when you have innovation, next slide, please. Yeah, just click all of them. So when you are having an innovation idea, there are one back. Yes, thanks. Several questions come to your mind. I have the idea, I have a great idea, and I think it would work in a market, but where do I collect evidence and learning for my innovation? So it's the source. What methods can I use to validate my innovation? So these are the questions regarding the methods. And how do I validate my innovation, and how do I show the added value, the impact of innovation on business, but also on sustainability? And that's about measures. How do I measure that my innovation is successful? Next slide, please. So from the literature, several 24 at least validation methods are available, but I picked out some that are more or less relevant for IoT kind of solutions and related to test farming. Number one is the customer interview. You go to customers and you interview them. The second one is your product simulation. So you develop a product as a tech product developer, and instead of just starting to produce in a mass amounts, you first simulate digitally your product on the screen, and you allow your customers to test them and give a feedback. The next one is the museum of failure. Like what can you learn from failed products? Like Trump stick. Well, actually, there is even a book about Trump, about 10 failures of Trump innovation. What can we learn also from Google Glass, for instance? Why wasn't it successful? Or Google Plus? Google is a very successful company, but not all the products have been successful and failed in the market. So what can we learn from that we don't make the same mistakes? The other one is the co-creation session. So you sit with your customers or with your stakeholders in the same room, and you try to create the product to take feedback for your product, for your solution. And of course, wireframes and mockups, the apps that are not completely developed, that you can start to test. There is also a method for validation. And next slide, please. Yeah. The next one. I think there is some. Oh yeah. So the validation, another method is imposter judo. So why make something which already exists, and why not fake until you make? And the best example is that for the end products, for instance, Zappos, which used to be producing shoes and selling it online. They first went to the local store, they make a picture, they post it on the website, and when the customer wanted it, they bought it from the shop and they posted to the customer, and they collected the feedback. And based on that, they became now #1 shoe web shop in the US. So yeah, first take the advantage of your competitor and make it yours. Explainer videos are also important for something we do also for IoF. You make a video and show how your product can be used and what are the added value. Concierge in-person service is very important also when you're working with farmers, because usually farmers are appreciating when you are going face-to-face contact instead of staying online, virtual, and in distance. And the last one is A or B testing. So you don't ask the customer, do you want my product, yes or not? You say, you want my product, but do you want A or B? And you ask them to test two types of the product and give a feedback. So this is the way you validate it. But how do you show the impact? Can you go to the next slide? Next slide, please. Alex, next slide, please. Yes, thank you. So what is the role of European test farm network in validation? I think the test farm network can help you as a product of software developer or the user to reach your end users. It can provide some validation tools, because it can also attract experts like me and similar, and develop validation tool, which is pretty standard and can be used by the ones who are connected to the network. Develop and maintain KPI database. The KPI is the key performance indicators, so which requires a long-term data collection. Once the data is collected for a long term, that can be used for the other product developers to see what others did and how they achieve a certain impact, and what would their product, what kind of impact their product would have on the market. And the test farm network also can help you identify relevant stakeholders, like Alex just did as a part of it, and find best measurement methods, find baseline and monitor the target value, because this is something which we already do at Internet of Food and Farm. So next slide, please. I think I'm done.
That's it. So that was the last slide. The part.
So thank you very much. And if you have questions, please send me an email or post me.
There will be a discussion anyway after that. So yeah, I think we still have time also with Intervalidation. Thank you very much, Gohar. A very important part of the whole thing, the validation. I was actually not too slow in clicking. It's what you're experiencing here is a bit like the delay in terms of the internet. So we have one question also to your part. So how do you rate the feasibility of proper service validation to achieve the following results as well? So that means what we've just seen is also a very challenging part. So it means we listed a few things there which are also challenging us in terms of KPI calculation. So maybe have a look at it, Mentimeter, and give us your idea. And next thing, so a short recap on the value proposition of the European Test Farm Network. So what we just seen is different stakeholders having different values that we're actually gaining from it. So most important, obviously, always at the center of it, and that's why we're doing it, is the farmer and the situation that he's in. So what we want to actually provide to him is the performance ranking of the smart services, so that they actually get a catalog, an overview, a benchmarking, let's say, for services that are out there. Because maybe a lot of you have been at the Agritechnica last week, it's crowded, it's a lot of services, it's actually growing every year, so there's new things coming up, robots, all sorts of software that is coming around, so very difficult to make investment decisions on that. So that is what we want to have, better investment decisions and actually the investment decisions in the future. And then also local access to knowledge, because you're not usually trusting your service provider so much, but you need a farmer around the corner that you should go to, and who's actually the guy knowing also a bit what's going on internationally. So not only local, because mainly these initiatives, again, are very local, knowing maybe a few services that are running in your region or your country, but not knowing what is happening in Europe or the rest of the world. So we need to connect and also funnel that that information there. And then what better interoperable services? So and even there, I think we have some nice services already out there, but to be very honest, we can do better. A lot of services that are still up there and being tested also by farmers are not yet that good. So it means we have to work on interoperability, on plug and play, on easy to use solutions, because we're not selling that to digital pioneers always. We're selling it also to just very normal farmers that also have to understand the technology and feel capable of using it in the right way. So the second part, obviously, what is in there for the EDTFN farmer? So when you're joining a European Digital Test Farm Network, what would be your benefits in order to do that? So first of all, it is additional income. So that is one part. Then it is, sorry for that. Just switched it. Sorry, so that will keep it. So additional income, become a local advisor, for example, for your ecosystem. Then access to investment, obviously that is important. So as the fund, for example, that we just described, could be an opportunity. And then access to latest innovations, obviously. So because everything that runs in the market is actually going through your fingers. So that might be also a motivation. Is right now the major motivation actually for the test farms that we're having in IoF. And then we have the service providers on the other side, which are actually gaining access to equipped test farms already. So it means they don't have to go there, win them, find them, equip them. That is already there. So we're just doing a matchmaking and they can actually start. So it means that reduces the product development time spent quite a lot. We have access maybe to virtual farms. So that means you don't even have to go there, but you can run your algorithm and your services against some historical data of farms already. So it means that gives you a little bit head start on validation of your digital service. Prediction parts are important to mention there. So everything which is connected to machine learning usually, is only being possible to be done on our existing data, which is already there. So that is something Test Farm Network can provide. Then there is obviously a bit of a better professionalism in the validation part, not getting maybe too close to the farmers that are doing it already, but we see that this is not their major business. So it means we can get a bit more professional on that. And then also in the user acceptance feedback, that means in the interface developments and things, you need a little bit of experience to do that. So that is what a European Test Farm Network actually can bring. So what we're looking for here and now, and why we're doing actually the webinar, and what are basically the next steps that we're getting to. So what we're looking for is obviously interested farmers to become professional test farmers. So that means everyone who has test farmers around you. That means in use case, for example. So for the people that are coming from IoF and IoF use cases, please go to your farmers, maybe take that presentation with you, or make a little appointment with us, and ask them if that would be an opportunity for them actually to maintain their pioneering services. The other one is obviously we're looking for project collaborations. We're very keen in that as well, because we don't want to reinvent the wheels, because we know in a lot of cases that there are initiatives locally, regional, national, but also European that are already going into that direction as well. So that's why we're partnering with EIT Food, with Nefertiti, for example, as a project, with Smart Agri Hubs as a project. So there's quite a lot of initiatives that we would like to bring together and to just add value and not create simply something new which is confusing the people on the market. So if you have anything that you're working on, please let us know. We just have to know a little bit what is on the map and what has happened. And then there is funding opportunities, obviously, that we're interested in. So if anyone knows how and which parts maybe we can fund in one way or the other through initiatives that maybe you're working with, can we connect it maybe to some funding sources that you already have, please let us know as well. And then obviously validation projects. So we have already some farms in our network already. So it means we are very interested to see if we can already work on some first validation projects as well. So that is the plan for 2020. So I think the next steps that we're planning now are that we're inviting the people that are interested in supporting that network from the different stakeholder parts to further workshops, to more work on the concept, to go a bit deeper into the need analysis again, but also into the business model with you. So it means with the stakeholders in terms of service providers, hardware providers for the validation part, but obviously a lot also with the farmers, So therefore, we're doing one first a co-creation sprint, how we call it, at the Food and Farm 4.0 in Berlin on the 20th of January next year. So we're starting very early this year, and then there will be several other opportunities coming up. So we will communicate that on our website. So there is a edtfn.eu website that you can actually go to and have a look at. Maybe also your farmers can actually go there. Wonderful would be if you could register on that website, because then we know that you're interested and that we can keep you up with more information on it. So if you would like to be further informed, stay tuned on what we're actually developing here, being informed also of the activities that we're planning. Go to the website, register, and then we keep you in the loop. But we also send you all of that by email again, and you will also receive a little bit of a wrap up of that webinar again. So all this information will be in there as well. And we have also one question for that on you. So first of all, did you find the business model of EDTFN convincing? So we broke it down into the different business models there. So please let us know if you find one or the other way, so the service provider fee, but also the other access fees, for example, for the education part. Do you find that convincing, or you just think, maybe they're gonna have to do some more work on that? Please let us know.
I'm Peter Gessler from Unsist. We
Welcome.
are part of the IoF project. We are developing a smart rumen bolus. Is a monitoring system for dairy and beef cattle. So a couple of words about the system. So the bolus sits in the rumen of the animal and measures different parameters from the animal: activity, temperature, pH level, and those data send it by through a gateway to the cloud-based software, and from this software, the farmers receive important information around the animals. It helps. It helps in a reproduction. I mean, faster reproduction, and also in animal monitoring, health monitoring issues. So this is in short.
But maybe coming back, Peter, to also your issues, because I connected to the test farm network. Because like right now, one of your duties, let's say, and maybe also challenges that you're having right now, is to identify new test farms you can actually apply do the validation for it. How does that go for you right now? So, and how would maybe a European test farm network make that easier for you?
So what we have to do, or what we would like to do, we need 5 farms around the Eastern Europe countries, and we have already negotiated with 2 of them. So we have one farm in Hungary, and also one is in Poland. And we are looking for other test beds or test farms. And to be honest, we have difficulties to find the right farm, because here in the Eastern Europe countries, there are some problems like language problems, for example. So we cannot understand. So they can't speak English. We cannot communicate with them. Also, we need innovative farmers who understands the innovative tools what we have, and it's also difficult to find the right farm. So that's why we asked Alexander and also the team from IoF to help us on that, because we need more and more farm to validate, and completely agree with your presentation that this is a project where we have to validate our system, because we need information from the farmers, from the KPIs. Where is the added value from our system, and what is the and of course we need the feedback to which helps us to develop the system further.
Yeah, very good. Also brought up now, maybe you can see it already on the screen as well, the results from the Mentimeter. So we have, for example, for the first question, ranking the challenges for the service providers by their importance. The leading ones are definitely the missing structures for the multi-actor product development side. I was actually quite surprised that was actually coming up top, because identifying fitting test farms, I thought maybe would be the most important one. So that is very interesting, I find. So maybe let's go and then reflect shortly on that outcome, because the actor approach, which is a major feature of IoF 2020, as we see with IoT and IoT solutions, we're coming to that very, very difficult point that a solution actually is not anymore being possible to put it into the market alone. Before, that was always the case. We have big companies in there, which the large people like the Class and the Kvernelons, they bringing out products by themselves. They're setting standards for these products by themselves. And now they're entering the digital age, and suddenly they find out we cannot do it anymore alone. We have to collaborate with service providers. We have to collaborate with our competitors. We have to collaborate with a lot of different other and smaller equipment manufacturers actually on the farm to make it seamlessly work. So a very challenging environment. Yeah. So how do you see that? So I think also Smart AgriHubs is tackling that quite intensively, right, François? So I think that is also a bit your role in Smart AgriHubs. Just giving him a moment to maybe unmute himself. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of the others. Do you have any reactions, Gohar, Peter?
Sure. So Moonsys is a small startup company, and we know that what we have is very specific. So to be honest, we do not have the same. So there is no other company who make the same, use the same technique what we have. But maybe it can happen that it's not enough for the farmers. So we are open to any cooperation from with other service providers, because we know that at the end the farmer needs more and more data, and also needs more and more information. And if Moonsys is one part of it, it's also good for us. So it's we are looking for a multi-actor product development and multi-actor product projects.
But there was a first questions asked in the chat by Madhur. He asked us the question: is there any interest in extending the network beyond Europe? And later on, I thought he also asked particularly for extending it to the country of India. Is one of you can one of you give an answer to that question of Madhur, if there is any possible extending of the network beyond Europe?
Yeah, always in general possible, but for now we're focusing on Europe and the Mediterranean region, let's say. So that means that it's including also Northern Africa, because first of all, it is logistic reasons, because it is not called network, it's called for a reason, basically. So the idea behind this obviously it derives also from IoF to strengthen the competitive position of our own service providers, and that is the big but, obviously we're exporting these services as well, and we also have to keep track of the solutions that are being developed in other countries. So yeah, natural connection already between IoF and India. Yeah, please.
Mm-hmm. I think for test farming, go for the service or product developer to go to test the product in India while their market is in Europe doesn't make sense, because in India you have different climate and different environment, different customers. So if the service provider is focusing on Eastern market or Indian market or Chinese market or whatever, then they have to test there. So if the service or product provider or developer is focusing in European market, it doesn't make sense to test it outside. Yeah.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for answering that question. And we go to a second one, was asked by Christian Malinescu. I hope I pronounce your name right. His question was, how about the ones who combine the two, both the developer of the IoT solution and the owner of the farm? How would they get access to fund the development and testing of the prototypes? Who would like to answer that question?
Right. First of all, I would say if we have a professional service provider that would like that they have an investment budget behind it, there are certain instruments in the European Commission or the European framework where you can actually enter. So like IoF, for example, is one, but the Commission is also intending to maintain that and professionalize that. So that would be one part, and the other part is definitely the normal part. As any other product development goes forward, so you're getting investors. You're getting your product market ready, you're launching it, you're getting sales cycles up, and you have further money to invest. So that is a bit like the cycle that we have to build up. So I think that is where majorly the money from the service providers comes from. The other big question is how can we enable enough test farms, because we still have maybe some issues to find well enough farms in some areas. There, yes, we need maybe some structural funding as well from the governmental side as well to actually implement these technologies in these regions as well.
Okay, Gohar or Peter, would you like to add something?
I think, yeah, sorry. If you have a solution and you test it in one farm, then you know your validation is not strong enough. So even if you have, if you are a developer and owner of the farm at the same time, you still want to sell your solution to other farms, and then you still have to test it in another farms.
Peter, you would like to react too?
Absolutely agree. So it's the same that we are looking for. So we would like to have more and more farms. Of course, there is a limitation because we can't finance it. But now we have farms in test farm in the Netherlands, in Poland, and this Sunday I will travel to Saudi Arabia. Completely different, the breeding method and the climate and everything. And of course, for the Middle East market, we need to test and validate our system there. Language issues with the Arabic language on the software and so on. So it's agree on that more and more. So the validated system in the Netherlands doesn't mean that it can be used in India or whatever in other part.
Thank you very much, Peter, for answering that. It's already past 5 o'clock. We started a little bit later, so I hope some of you would like to join for just a couple of minutes so we can have some more questions. For example, the question of Augusti is who would be the owner of the proposed foundation? Can someone answer that question? Who would be the owner of the proposed foundation?
That is a very good question. And we're also asking that ourselves right now. We're thinking about a couple of opportunities. It will definitely not be the industry. That is for sure, because otherwise it would actually lose its independence. So if there would be machine manufacturers, service providers, or the industry behind it, would be quite difficult to have it still independent. So what we're thinking in right now is to hook it maybe to structures like EIT Food, to structures like the research and innovation institutes in the different regions, so that they are and the facilitators on the national and on the regional level. So I think that will be a kind of structure where it goes through. And then maybe, and that is a question, we have to talk about memberships. So usually the foundation has members. And here it's the question if that kind of membership, in a way, not maybe steering members, but at least advising members or something, could be service providers as well, or could be also manufacturers or companies. Steering part should be, let's say, independent, because otherwise we're losing this comparable part maybe at the end.
Okay, thank you, Alex. One more question here. That's from Theodore. He is asking, any reference website or material to share with the farmers to let them understand what we are speaking about? Maybe Gohar can tell something about that. Is that the normal IoF website which we can find information for farmers, or is there someplace else which you can share information on?
I think Alex
knows best,
because yeah, it's about the
okay. I'll leave it up to you, Alex.
First of all, there is the website www.edtfn, so short for European Digital Test Farm Network.eu, so edtfn.eu. That's just a brochure of basically of the concept right now, but there's also a little registration function that you can go to and register if you're interested to go further with us on that journey. Next to that, obviously, we're going to share the presentation with you. So if there's, that I think it's a very nice vehicle as well to use it, the webinar as well. And then further, so we're kindly inviting everyone 20th of January to the Farm and Food. So there is going to be a session on digitalization and the test farm network basically on it, where we're discussing it with the industry side. So it means basically with the service provider side, but there are also farmers being there. So it will be like one of our first setups. And then the next going to be planned for February, March, but not yet having a clear date and location. So we'll communicate that as soon as we organize.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Alex. I'd like to bring up one last question, I think, because we're already out of time. Amelie Fischer, she is asking, I did not clearly understand the business model. Who pays the test farms? Who is going to answer that question? Alex? Again?
Yeah, that is still
okay.
Also a very good question. Again, we're also thinking about that. So for everyone also to make clear, this is not yet there, the test farm network. We're working on it. It's a concept that we're trying to share now and that we're getting back and forth on. So the current idea is obviously that the service provider who's actually getting the value addition done in a quicker pace also pays for that validation service. Right now, that's not the case. So right now they're paying with their man hours in the company, basically. So the people that you're having in order to find the farms, get them on board, all these kind of things is basically the indirect payment that companies are doing right now. We would like to outsource, let's say, that part a little bit from the companies, from the service providers, and make them pay for that specific service to the test farms. The question is, how much will that be? That is indeed a question that we cannot answer yet. Depends on the size of the farm, on the duration of the activities, on the complication sometimes of measuring the KPIs they were actually doing there. So it's a bit that is still something that we have to develop in 2020 and will be on our list. So I think there will be a bit of business model testing and validation also in 2020 taking place. So everyone who's interested in giving us ideas on it, absolutely welcome. So if there's any things that you already tested in other projects, we're ready.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Still some questions left. We try to answer that question. I've tried to give them the questions to Gohar and Alex later on, and maybe they get back to you later. For now, I like to wrap things up and by giving Alex the moment to draw the conclusions for today. Alex?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. So first of all, sorry for the technical issues at the beginning.
Exactly.
I think the test farm network for itself will kick off further, as I said already, further events. So please go to the website. That's the first thing that I would like to ask you to do, and register. If, with your kind permission, we will send you at least one last email at the end now with a summary of the whole presentation, and also with some guidance or further information to come. Secondly, there are going to be a row of things coming up in 2020. So we will do, as I said, the co-creation with farmers, with service providers. But also we're going to start our first validation activities already with some side activities, for example, between us, the European, EIT Food Accelerator, for example, has a few use cases that they would maybe like to validate, so that we show already that that system can actually work. So that will be done in 2020, and then hopefully we have something to hand over in 2020. And in the meantime, please look also to Smart Agri Hubs, the other big projects, and Nefertiti. So these are the projects that we would like to combine as well with us, and that we're also strongly relying on. So it's not, and I have to stress that again, the idea comes, and maybe the conceptual idea comes from IoF, but it's definitely not something which IoF will do and set up by itself, because it's simply not in our scope right now. Okay. But we do everything that we can do in order to maintain it. So everyone who is interested, helping, taking that over, welcome.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And I will also like to thank, of course, here on my side here, Gohar and Marion, and also Peter for joining us today and giving insights on this interesting topic. We'll be having one more webinar this year on the IoF 2020 platform. So please look out for the next one. It's about investment deals and pitching. Also, Alex will be presenting on the 12th of December. And yeah, thank you also for joining us today and listening to this interesting topic. And have a good day. Thanks from us all. And bye, and till the next one.